in the recent ads where the Obama campaign has been attacking Romney's experience with Bain.
Yeah.
Is that an example then of them attacking his professional career and trying to make it a political move?
They're criticizing his professional biography, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're not going to have time today because you'll cram a lot into today's discussion to talk about Jeremiah Wright, about Bain Capital, and hopefully maybe it's something we can come back to in the last portion of class when we come back from Memorial Day. But that's exactly right. And the Obama campaign was relatively willing to let others criticize Bain for them, and even when the Obama campaign ran commercials on it, the president himself is not talking about it. Cory Booker's remarks yesterday sort of forced the president's hand. He had to talk about it at the news conference today. But otherwise, just like Romney is perfectly happy to let the most severe criticisms of Obama come from outside sources, Obama was more than happy to let somebody else carry professional biographical criticisms. And what Obama did today was strategically very savvy. He attempted to link the political biographical criticism, the professional biographical criticism, to a policy matter. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's relevant to Romney's policy agenda. The reason I'm bringing up May's spring break is because it's relevant to the policy goal. And I don't any idea what that policy goal would be, so I'm going to drop my analogy right now. But you get my point on it. So to the extent that you want to minimize, the other way to minimize the backlash is to criticize your opponent's policy agenda and their political biography rather than their personal. And the third, and by far the most effective way to minimize backlash, is to engage not in purely negative, or for that matter in purely positive campaigning, but rather in comparative messaging. And if a positive message only tells the voters something good, something favorable about your own candidate, and if a negative message only tells them something damaging about their opponent, a comparative message tells both. And what that does, the advantage that the comparative message has over one that's either purely positive or purely negative, is the information is seen as more credible. Because if you think about it, I'm setting the bar of credibility a little bit lower. If I tell you that my candidate is the most wonderful thing since sliced bread, that she's going to make magical change across the state of California, every child in our public schools is going to the Ivy Leagues, that's how great my candidate is. You're going to think, okay, yeah, really? On the other hand, if I tell you that my opponent is evil, my opponent is the devil, my opponent does not make a reflection in a mirror when he walks past it, you're going to think, okay, nobody's that bad either. But when I present the information in the context of a comparison, I'm not saying that my candidate's the best ever. I'm not saying that my opponent's the worst ever. I'm simply saying that my candidate is a preferable alternative to the opponent. And when you as a candidate yourself, if you're running yourself and delivering the message, that credibility becomes even more important. Because if you say, I'm the best thing ever, I'm a revolutionary, salvationary candidate, hear me roar. Voters are going to look at you with some skepticism. And if all you do for the reasons we talked about is run down your opponent, they're going to be skeptical for other reasons. But if you say, not in so many words, I'm not going to tell you that I'm the best thing ever. But here's why I think I might make a better choice than the person I'm running against. He's a good person. I have a lot of respect for everything he's accomplished in our community. We just happen to have different positions on some very important issues. And if you want, I'm more than happy to talk to you in more detail about it. But I'm not here to run down my opponent today. I'm here to tell you what I believe in. And I hope when he comes to talk to you, he'll tell you what he believes in. I hope you'll listen to both of us and make an educated choice. But I think that ultimately, if you listen to us both carefully, you'll choose me, and here's why.
Can you use that as effectively with your Saints as with your salvageables? And I'm just reflecting on the conversation earlier around being disillusioned, and in a conversation I had yesterday evening with my twin brother, who believes that Obama had been insufficient on delivering jobs, and that his foreign policy has been too interventionist. So if I'm having this discussion with my twin brother, as I was, I'm gonna point out that, well, that all may be true, but from that perspective, Romney may be even worse, right? But he's somebody who's been so disillusioned, he feels like nobody's good. So he's kind of checked out.
And this goes back to the point I was making earlier. The base of the Democratic Party is disappointed in Obama for a whole series of reasons. The base of the Republican Party is suspicious of Romney for a whole host of reasons. So both of them have obstacles that many candidates might not otherwise have in terms of motivating their own base. So the alternative way to motivate your vote base is to frighten them about the opposition. That said, and I think this is why it's less useful for you guys, is most of you are going to be running for school board, for legislature, for city council, for offices up to a certain level, offices for which voters are not going to have a huge store of information about you going into the campaign. Your brother's disillusioned about Barack Obama because he knows a lot about him. While he admires a lot, he's disappointed that a lot of things he wanted to happen didn't happen. Your brother is upset with Mitt Romney because he's read about him and heard a lot about him from Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich and Michelle Bachmann and Rick Perry and Herman Cain over the last several months, and isn't quite sure whether to trust him or not to trust him. Most of you guys are not going to enter in the campaign with the voters having that kind of store of knowledge about you. Here's another reason to be wary, particularly in entry-level politics, of negative messaging. Is if you begin a campaign, if you begin a campaign with a positive message, in addition to what I consider to be just moral and decent reasons, because you owe the voters to tell them something about you and what you hope to accomplish. More practically speaking, if you can't handle the moral aspect of it, not you personally. If you can't handle the moral aspect of it, or if that's not sufficient for you, practically speaking, a positive message offers you the only protection, the only inoculation against your opponent's attack. If I start out the campaign from day one telling you bad things about Earl, well, when he starts telling you bad things about me, you're probably going to believe him. Because the only thing you know about me is what he tells you. But if I offer you something about myself, if I tell you about my personal, professional, and political biography, if I tell you about my policy priorities in a positive or at the very least comparative way, his criticism might have some impact, but it's going to have less. Because instead of just dealing with one side of the debate, at least it's conflicting information. When you hear Earl's criticism of me, you say, wait a minute, that doesn't jive with what I heard about Scher. And then you at least weigh the alternatives. But if the only thing you know about me is what he tells you, and that I say neat things about him, then you're inclined to believe everything he says. The only protection I have against his negative message is the positive message that I deliver for myself. When you get to statewide and certainly in national offices, the voters have such a sufficient store of information that as we're seeing with Obama and Romney, the conversation gets more complicated. There's no one in this room who in the next couple of years is going to run for governor, for U.S. Senator, for president. Okay, not many of you are going to run for president, a couple of you might. But for those of you who are going to start out at more entry levels of politics, if the voters don't know anything about you other than what your opponent says about you, that's a bad place from which to run a campaign. The good news is, we finally caught up on the syllabus. 3 weeks in and we're finally caught up heading to Memorial Day break. The bad news is we didn't get a chance to talk current events and contemporary politics except in the very briefest of terms. But hopefully what we can do 2 weeks from today, when we come back after Memorial Day, is in addition to talking about the news media, is be able to have a slightly longer conversation about how the candidates and the campaigns are employing some of the things we talked about. So, have a great Memorial Day, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
If you're interested in the science thing,